All right, joining me now is Nikki Haley, former ambassador to the UN. Ambassador, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. I want your take. I think you and I would both agree that we feel like Vladimir Putin is a war criminal. But diplomatically, do you agree that Joe Biden and the White House should be classifying Putin that way?
I mean, look, you have to just look at the facts. I mean, he's turning around and he's killing innocent people. He is hitting maternity wards. He's basically stopping humanitarian lines. He's a war criminal.
No. Well, listen, I agree. I'm wondering if there's any consequences diplomatically for calling him that. Again, I would agree with you. And as you navigate the world and trying to bring peace to Ukraine, does this make it more complicated, I guess is my question.
Well, it's only complicated in that the lawyers want to get hold of it. And I think they're talking more about paper and shuffle work. But I think Biden needed to call him a war criminal. I think it's the right thing to do that. And I think that anybody that sees what's happening would know that he's a war criminal.
No, I hear you. Okay, let's go to Xi Jinping. Biden and Xi are going to have a meeting tomorrow. What message should Biden have in that meeting with the Chinese leader tomorrow?
Well, he shouldn't listen to anything President Xi says because he'll be lying. What he should be doing is focusing on what he wants the message to be delivered. And that is, if Russia receives a lifeline from China, then the U.S. and their allies will start responding accordingly. And China doesn't want the wrath of all of us. And I think they need to make that very clear.
And I actually agree with that. We have to be clear to China. I mean, what kind of things should we be clear about to prevent China from engaging in helping Russia out in their conflict and war with Ukraine?
Well, I think any money sent to Russia to kill Ukrainians should be something. Any sort of defense weapons should be considered a lifeline. And then certainly we should let them know that if chemical weapons are used in any way, shape, or form, that we will look to China as not having not stopped Russia from doing that. And I think we need to put that onus on them to try and get them to put pressure on Russia.
So, but is this maybe the threat should be we are going to impose more sanctions on China? We're going to maybe delist more of their companies. What threats do you think will move China to say, okay, listen, the consequence of us helping Russia out are too great for our economy. We're going to stay out of this conflict. What is that?
You know, one of the things that we did at the United Nations and one of the things that President Trump did is we didn't show our cards.
Yes.
We just put the threats out there. And I think that's where Biden has been wrong. He said what he won't do. You shouldn't say what you will or won't do. You should just challenge them and say they don't want to find out.
I think that's a really good point. Here's what it concerns me, because earlier today, a Chinese foreign ministry spokesperson called the U.S. and NATO the culprits of the Ukraine crisis, which, by the way, is absolutely outrageous, right? So when you look at trying to move China away from Russia, but China's calling us the culprits and NATO's the culprit for the conflict, do you really think we can get China to sit on the sidelines?
So first of all, you should read a lot into that, because that shows you right there that China is on Russia's side. Right. First of all, you look at the fact that China cut off their internet in terms of information of what's really happening with the Ukraine-Russia war. They are basically calling it a special military operation and using Russian talking points. Now they're blaming the U.S. and the West for war. So Biden should know when he goes and sits down and has that meeting that he's talking with the senior partner of this whole enemy regime. And so I think the fact that China said that, they totally showed their cards. They told us that what they're doing is basically talking for the Russians.
Totally. So, but I want to get your take on this, Ambassador, because I would hope that the UN would be a little more engaged in this conflict, have a stronger voice in the conflict. And you look at the UN, where you were the ambassador, and they're basically nowhere to be found. I mean, what is the purpose of the UN to not go, listen, this is wrong, this is a war, this is an invasion, and we're going to condemn Russia for it? But they're silent, Ambassador.
I mean, that was my life for 2 years, is that it's hard to get them to do anything. I mean, the fact that Russia's on the Human Rights Council tells you everything you need to know. The fact that Iran is now heading up the Women's Rights Commission tells you even more than that. I think that it was great that they all voted to condemn Russia. That was actually a major thing for them. But look, I think that the U.S. and our allies should be railing at the UN every single day. That's what I would be doing, is a press conference calling out Russia, calling out China, calling out Iran, calling out anyone that is doing anything that's hurting innocent civilians.
And again, Ambassador, they sit on the sidelines. They're not engaged, and I thought that was the purpose of the UN. And they're nowhere to be found. But Ambassador Haley, thank you for joining me, and thanks for your perspective.
Thanks so much, Sean.